I also think the other thing that people really don't speak about is almost like, I want to say the aftermath, because there's that feeling of like knowing that you're, and a complete lack of control and loss of control in like knowing that you're losing a baby.
Welcome to Slay, the podcast where we dive into all aspects of female health, fitness, and life. I'm your host, Louise Hazel, and today I'm honoured to have a truly inspiring guest. She's a renowned fitness instructor, a motivational speaker, and a wellness advocate who's inspired countless women to move their bodies and live their best lives. But beyond her success in the fitness world, her most personal and transformative journey yet has been her path to motherhood. In this episode, she will open up about her fertility struggles, the challenges, heartbreaks, and lessons, and how she navigated those difficult times with grace and determination. She's also going to be sharing her experience in the postpartum phase, including the emotional and physical challenges, as well as the strategies that she's been using to prioritize her life as a new mum. This conversation is heartfelt, real, and empowering. So whether you're on your own fertility journey or navigating postpartum or simply looking for inspiration on how to find strength through life's challenges, then this episode is for you. So grab a cup of tea, let's get cozy, and welcome the incredible Deja Riley to the Slay podcast.
Deja, thank you so much for joining us on the Slay podcast. It's been a minute, isn't it?
It has been so long. Honestly, was it like before the pandemic?
Yes. Yeah. And you had just moved, I think, when we caught up, you moved to New York. So much has happened since then. I feel like your life has completely changed. There's been some positives and some real challenges along the way. And I really want to get into your story because I feel like it has the ability to motivate, inspire, and give hope to so many women. And your story is one of motherhood. That's your journey. But the first thing I wanted to ask you was about the beginning of that. And when did you and your husband, Jimmy, when did you start trying for a baby? When did you first start?
So I like to say that like we started intentionally trying in like 2020 going into 2021. And, this is when we felt like we were ready to jump on the train of starting to have children. And to be honest with you, we were just like so optimistic and we went into it thinking, oh, well, now that we're ready, we'll just try and it'll happen,
Right.
But that was not necessarily the case for us. And so, just kind of giving you an overview, I experienced a lot of struggles in infertility, and then it kind of just felt like defeated and felt like maybe this is something that's not in the cards for me. And for me, like that is so opposite of the way that I like to approach life. I am a person that like doesn't take no for an answer. And if it's like a no, it's fine. I'll make my own way. So it's never a no for me. Mm-hmm. And I was finally starting to get to a place of like acceptance that what I desired to have might not actually be meant for me or might not actually happen for me. And so how do I move forward in my life, accepting what is and continuing to live my life to the fullest, knowing that this is something that I've always desired, deeply desired.
What was the first hurdle that you remember encountering with your fertility journey?
So about 6 months into us trying, I started to think like, okay, well, maybe all of these things that I've heard people say about like, being at the age that I'm at and maybe being an athlete and, all of the things that, my body might be going through, maybe I'll need a little bit of assistance. And so we saw a fertility specialist about 6 months into us trying because I was starting to get frustrated. And I think a lot of women will be able to relate to that moment that you get your cycle, it comes and you're like, like, it's just like this, like, what is the best way for me to describe it? It's like this despair that you feel, or like this defeat that you feel. And
Mhm.
it feels like a gut punch. Like, I've been getting my cycle since I was a teenager. And so it's interesting how the experience of that coming every single month goes from, okay, like, just got to deal with this again, till, oh gosh, it came again, which means I'm not pregnant, or at least, the chances are not likely that I'm pregnant. So, after feeling that a handful of times, I was like, okay, maybe I just need to get some advice. Maybe I need to run some tests and get my body checked out. Maybe, having some sort of fertility assistance is in the cards for us.
Deja,
And
how old
so,
at this point? Just a quick question.
ooh, that is a good question. I was 30. Oh gosh, how old am I right now? I was 32.
Got you. So 32, 6 months of trying, and no major results. So you're like, okay, let me go and get everything checked over. What happened next?
So we went to this fertility specialist at Kindbody, and we actually fell in love with the reproductive endocrinologist that they paired us with. And she was with us for like that first almost 2 years of the journey. But we had gone to a different clinic just for proximity reasons, and then returned back to her towards the closing of that chapter. But we went, and she had me run all of these different tests. And it was interesting because, like, as we were running the tests and I would get the results that, like, I'm all good, and I think I also felt a sense of, like, defeat after getting the results of each of those tests. Because, like, when we get test results, from any sort of doctor, whenever we're getting, tested, we're like, oh, like, you're all clear, you're all good. And then you're happy about it. But, like,
Yeah.
for me, I was like, well, that just means I'm one step further from having an answer
Mm-hmm.
as to what's going on with my body, and, like, why isn't this happening for me? Well, after she had run a bunch of tests on both Jimmy and I, she sent us off and was like, I want you guys to at least keep trying for another 6 months before we revisit and, figure out if we want to go the IVF route or the IUI route. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to get discouraged. I'm going to shake this off. I'm going to jump back into action, and we're going to make this happen. And we kept trying. And then that July, so this is from June to July, that
Mm-hmm.
July we did get pregnant. And that same September, we lost our first pregnancy. So, yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Thank
So
you.
you have been, a good ways into that journey, July, August, September, like 3 months into that journey.
Almost, yeah.
What did that feel like for you?
Ugh. Honestly, I was crushed. I was devastated. It was one of the worst pains I ever felt in my heart.
Mm.
And I didn't know how I was going to come back from it. I, like, completely disconnected from everyone. No one knew where I was except for my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And I essentially, like, wouldn't leave my apartment for like a week straight. I remember just crying, like,
Mm.
every day, every night. There was very few, like, hours in the day where, like, I wasn't just, like, drenched in tears. And it was just something that felt so discouraging and just, like, so gut wrenching that I honestly, for one of the first times in my life, thought, I don't know if I come back from this. Like, I don't know. I felt I felt like in that moment I was forever changed. And truthfully, I was.
What did the doctor say to you after that first miscarriage? And I'm so sorry
So,
that happened. Like, I
thank you.
think you talk honestly and openly, and this is one of the things I really commend you for. Your commitment to really sharing in order to help other women know that they're not alone is something that doesn't go unnoticed.
Thank you.
I've been tuned into, like, what you've obviously shared, and I really wanted to sit down today and and get into, you know, the depths of it and into the weeds, because I feel like as women we need a lot of that to heal as well. What
Yeah.
did the doctor say to you after that first miscarriage? Because, you know, I've been in the same position, and you know, at that point, my reaction from doctors have been, "This is great. You know, you can get pregnant." Was that the same story that they were saying, and how did that?
Almost the exact same thing that the doctor said. Um, you know, I went to the hospital when it happened because I was like bleeding profusely, like nonstop, just blood gushing, gushing. And I remember just being so terrified and not knowing what was happening with my body. And so I went to the hospital, and, you know, the doctor actually said to me that I had what was called a subchorionic hematoma.
Mm,
And there was a 50-50 chance that I would lose the baby. And at this point, I had not technically miscarried yet. So,
mm,
like, they were able to do an ultrasound. And I think one of the hardest parts for me was that I was actually able to hear a heartbeat.
yeah.
And then I went home and I continued to bleed. And I remember sitting down watching a movie with my in laws and my husband. And it was Labor Day weekend. I will never forget it. It's like the most vivid imagery in my mind of exactly where I was, what was happening. And I felt like this stabbing pain that would not go away, like in my stomach. And I just like, it was like in my lower abdomen area. And it was just so, like, I wanted to scream. And instead, I just like left the room and I ran to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is a bit graphic. So I will like withhold some of the details of what was.
Tell us everything, because these are the things I
Okay.
think that we women don't talk about enough. I feel
Yeah.
like our mothers never prepped us for this type of stuff. Don't hold back if you don't want to. Go for it, girl.
Okay. So I will share. Um, it took me a long time to be able to talk about it, and like it's still parts of it are still very painful, but I think sharing my story has brought me so much healing.
Mm.
And I'm still healing from it, even, life after loss, and being able to now have my rainbow baby is beautiful. But I will also never forget my very first pregnancy and what happened when it ended. But I went upstairs and I sat on the toilet, and like I was still bleeding a lot. But from that, like, ridiculously like painful, like sharp stab, I felt something kind of come out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And like I looked down and I just saw like sort of like a jelly hanging. And I thought maybe it's a clot, but it was like too big to be a clot.
Yeah.
And I remember just screaming to the top of my lungs, and my husband ran up the stairs and came into the bathroom. And from that point on, I felt like everything was like just a like blur. Like everything was just like, I have no idea what the doctor said once I got to the hospital. I have no idea. Like I remember crying in my mother-in-law's arms. I remember my husband actually reaching his hand into the toilet and like helping like pass the fetus and like pull it out of me.
Mm.
And then I don't remember anything else. I remember like from him telling me, like I sat in the tub for I have no idea how long, like over an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And he took me to the hospital. Um, and I have like the doctor was talking, and I just was like in a daze, like it was just white. And I was just like staring off into the distance. And then I just remember crying. I was just crying and crying, and I felt ashamed.
Mm.
And I felt like, I felt very disappointed and discouraged, but more than anything, I just didn't feel like it was something that I could talk about. And it took me a long time to feel like I could share it with even like my family, let alone like friends. And then, I think it was almost a year later that I actually shared it publicly and started sharing on my platform some of my story.
Wowzers. Deja, what a soldier. Like, you know, I think any woman that has been through that, like, nobody prepares us women for miscarriage. We don't know what to expect. It's not something you even ever think of. You know it's a possibility, but there's always that, I'll cross that bridge if and when it comes. There's always that fear at the back of the mind. But I think when you're experiencing it, there's still that doubt, right? I know I've been through one recently myself, and I can honestly say, like, my heart just goes out. Like, I've, so much empathy. And I also think the other thing that people really don't speak about is almost like, I want to say, the aftermath, because there's that feeling of like knowing that complete lack of control and loss of control in
Yeah.
like knowing that you're losing a baby. And like, you know, what did that feel like for you? Did you feel like you talked about feeling ashamed, but do you feel like you'd caused it? Like, what were the things running through your mind?
Well, first off, I want to say my heart goes out to you, and I'm so sorry that you went through that.
Thank
And I hope that you felt supported in that time that it actually happened. But I also hope that you feel supported now. And I want to say
you.
that, like, I'm here. Like, if you ever feel like you need someone to talk to that's been through it, like, you 100% have a sister over here.
Yes.
Um, yeah, no, like, honestly, like, I really, really do think these kinds of conversations are more important than a lot of the things that we learn in health class in school. I think, like, you should learn about this stuff, this reproductive education
Mhm.
very early on in life. I feel like I was learning about my body, like learning more things about my body than I ever had as I entered into this fertility space.
Yes.
And, as much as I um, already felt like I knew about my body as an athlete and a fitness professional,
Hmm.
I really started to feel like I'm a beginner again. Like, I'm learning something brand new. Like, wait, what is all of this stuff? And, like, it is a lot more complex than people make it. I
Hmm.
think that, you know, oftentimes, and I know I'm veering from the question, so I'm going to circle back. But, like, I think oftentimes we just grace over it as if, this is stuff that everybody already knows. And because of that, we don't sit down and have these kinds of conversations, amongst each other as women, as, sisters, as friends, as mothers and daughters. Like, these are such, like, critical conversations to have before you get to the challenges, before you get to the obstacles, because the education will, I think, prevent, and this is going to your answer, or to answer the question that you asked, it's going to prevent the thoughts that might creep into someone's head, or like, just like the mental exhaustion that I experienced in the aftermath, and that I still do experience now going into motherhood. I think, like, the hardest part afterwards was, like, not having an answer as to why. And
Mm.
so I definitely played the blame game. I definitely put it all on me. I, was like thinking, okay, like, what could I have done differently? And
Mhm.
I think, like, also that goes back to my athletic, like, background. I was like going back and like
Yes.
reassessing,
Mhm.
yes, like, all of my steps. And I was like, how you, like, you criticize yourself, or you, like, critique yourself in practice.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing to myself after having a miscarriage. Like, I was in my head like, okay,
What did I
here's,
eat?
yep. It really was that. It was like, what did
What
I eat?
did I
How
exercise?
was that? Yeah, yep. All those things. It was like a full checklist, like, just going down all of it, all of it. Like, how can I do this better next time?
Mm.
And, like, praying that there would be a next time,
And what
because
did
then
I
I
was
was,
gonna
like, going down this rabbit hole of information that I was reading online, and that wasn't making it any better either.
what did the doctor say on the day that you miscarried?
On that day, I really have, like, it is a blur to me as to what the doctor said. But when I did go back to the fertility clinic, this was months later. we actually decided that we were going to ask them if we could start the process of IVF.
Mhm.
And we were given the recommendation. This was a different fertility clinic because we had moved to Brooklyn at this point.
Mhm.
And so we wanted somewhere that was a little bit closer because you, like, for these kinds of treatments, you have to go into the office several times. And so, like, I didn't want like the commute back and forth uh, from the to the other clinic because it was much further from where we lived. So we found a different clinic and they actually recommended IUI
Mhm.
rather than doing IVF.
Explain
And
the
so
differences.
so IUI is a little bit less invasive. Instead of all of the like shots that you have to do and then extracting your eggs and doing an egg retrieval and then taking the sperm and fertilizing the egg afterwards, you do have to take some medication in preparation for the procedure. However, they call it the turkey basting procedure,
Mhm.
which I'm sure some people out there know, but if you don't know,
One
it's
night.
like the yeah. So basically what they do is like they take a syringe of your partner's sperm and they inject it into you and then you basically lay on your back with your hips elevated for like 15 minutes and then you go home and you see what happened. It's like assisted sex.
Yeah.
And so we actually had four failed IUIs. We
Mm.
did that process 4 times. Um, I mean, it's already mentally and physically exhausting. It's also financially exhausting.
Yeah.
And I feel like people don't talk about that enough either. It's like a lot of these options, I feel very fortunate that I was able to,
Do you
you know,
remember the cost of a round of IUI?
ooh, I do not. I'll look it up and I'll get back to you.
Mhm.
But because I definitely have all the bills saved. We definitely accumulated some pretty fat bills, although nothing has amounted to the same cost as giving birth, which that's a whole nother thing. Oh my gosh, that bill,
Was in the hundreds of thousands.
not quite, but the tens of thousands.
Got you.
And that to me is,
That's with insurance.
yeah, with insurance. And I also did an unmedicated natural birth.
Yeah.
So,
So,
you know, I didn't have epidural, like I didn't, get any sort of medications at the hospital. I wanted, a pretty hands-off process. And
mm.
so I didn't have a lot of medical interference throughout my labor, but I still had a pretty hefty bill walking out of there.
You know how much it is? You don't want to know how much it is to give birth in the UK.
Oh my gosh. Is it more?
It's
Wait,
free. It's
no. Free?
completely free. Yeah. We have free healthcare, but in this whole kind of process, I don't think many people in the US realize that free healthcare means free healthcare. There is no bill at the end of
Wow.
it. Like the whole
Wow.
beginning to end process, with the exception of like IVF and stuff like that.
Right.
I believe you might be able to get a couple of rounds or whatever free as well. I'll double check and get back to you girls on that.
Oh my goodness. Please do.
Yeah. Um, I want to loop back round just really quickly because I feel like we brushed over just a little bit when talking about miscarriages. One of the things that surprised me that I didn't know about whatsoever, I thought that when I passed, my pregnancy, that the pain would stop, but it didn't. And I experienced what felt like contractions every 5 minutes. So I would
Wow.
literally just get sharp abdominal like pains that would, last for about 15 to 20 seconds and then dissipate. And it was kind of like that for me for, I would say, a day and a half. And I was like, wow, I didn't know what these feelings were. It's my body obviously trying to make sure that I'd expelled the whole pregnancy. And it was, my body doing the right thing in order to keep me healthy and alive and all of those things. I had no idea. I remember being in the car and going to the hospital at the doctor at the time and literally just literally just in your seat, just, when you want to literally just push yourself off the seat because the pain is so sharp.
Yeah.
And these are the things that, I want more women to understand and to know about. I'm not saying that everybody's, the same, but did you experience any symptoms or anything after the miscarriage that was like completely unexpected? You had no idea was happening.
Well, truthfully, I thought the bleeding would stop,
Right.
but I kept bleeding and like for days afterwards.
Yeah.
And so it was more discomfort than anything. Like I was just uncomfortable bleeding. And then it was a constant reminder that it had happened. And I think that for me, like also kept me feeling so broken. Like I think a lot of the feelings that I had trying to sort of navigate what I was going through, like I felt like, okay, I'm having these daunting feelings of having to share this news with anybody that's close to me and anybody that already knew that I was pregnant. And then on top of that, I'm still in so much pain and I am not sure of exactly what happened. So I don't even feel like I can give a clear explanation to anyone as to like, what went on. But I think like I was just kind of drowning in shame more than anything.
Bless you. That's um the other thing I think that felt uncomfortable was because I haven't used pads in a long, long time. Not since I first started my periods back when I was 12 years old. But that is a constant. I feel like actually, it's the only thing that can help, catch the blood that you're losing at the time. But going back to pads was a daily and a moment by moment reminder of what was happening as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost felt like an injury to a certain extent. I felt like I was like nursing a wound, which was a really interesting way to view my body, in a really new way.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about what was the light at the end of the tunnel for you. So you had the 4 failed or IUIs. What happened next for you, Deja?
Honestly, in between the 3rd and 4th failed IUIs, I think that's when I started to see a little bit of silver lining because I had the 3 failed IUIs with the other fertility clinic. And then I went back to Kind Body and met with that same reproductive endocrinologist. And she actually wanted to do an ultrasound. And she did this test where I'm drawing a blank on the name of the test, but I should go back and look at it and then I'll let you know what it was. But basically they pump your whole entire uterus with like fluid and they can kind of see like what's going on in the ultrasound. And they like take like a small camera inside. And so after they did that, she saw polyps on the lining of my uterus. And she's like, okay, we're going to do a hysteroscopy and we're going to remove them. And so she did that procedure shortly after. And it was like a few days later, she set it up for me. And then after she removed the polyps, she did a small DNC. Now, oftentimes DNCs are done after somebody has a miscarriage in order to make sure that like, they've cleaned everything out. There's no like, I guess leftover like pieces of the fetus and things like that living inside of you because that could cause harm to the mother.
Yep.
And so she did that for me and she's like, okay, I think we should try IUI once more. And that's when we did our 4th IUI and it failed. And to be honest with you, I do like keep going back to like my athletic state of mind because I felt so driven that when I look back, all of these treatments happened over the course of like a year and a half. But I was like running full speed ahead and I didn't even realize that like I had done 4 IUIs, a hysteroscopy, a bunch of tests in between all of that. And then I started IVF all within a year and a half time. And I was like, one of my girlfriends actually stopped me and was like, it's okay to take a pause. And
Mm.
I was like, no, I have to keep going. Like, this, I want this. Like, I want to do it. She's like, no, really, like, I just want to say this as your friend and your sister. Like, it's okay if you take a pause. Like, you have been going nonstop. And then she repeated all of the procedures back to me. And this was before we even started IVF. And I was like, oh, yeah, I did do all of that, like, to my body. And like, I think, like, I wasn't even thinking about all of the potential, like, repercussions of, like, these foreign substances going in my body, like the hormones and things like that you have to take in preparation for these procedures. And I jumped right into IVF, which
Mm.
I think a lot of people know, like, that have gone through that process, or even gone through just the first portion of it, which is the egg retrieval, which is actually all I ended up doing. And I'll explain that a little bit more. But I actually started the process of IVF because my doctor said, and it was the end of November, about to go into December. So it was like around this time, um, in 2022.
Two.
Yes. In 2022. And I remember my doctor saying, like, okay, we're gonna have to either jump into the stems right away, because you'll miss the potential time in which we can do your egg retrieval, because everyone will go on holiday break.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, I want to do it. I want to do it now. And she's
Yeah.
like, okay, but there's a lot of steps. Like, we have to run your insurance. We have to do this, that. Like, I was like, do it all. And I remember, like, being on the phone for like hours. Like, my husband was like, babe, it's like, okay if we just, like, wait until after the holidays. And I was like, no, we can't wait until after the holidays. We have to do it now. Like, I'm ready to do it now. So let's just dive in. And he was like, okay, I'm on board. If that's what you want to do, let's do it. But I think also another thing that a lot of people don't talk about, and I'm curious to know this from you too, Elise, like, how did your partner feel coming out of it? Because my husband didn't really talk to me about how he felt until much later in therapy, like, actually not until after we had our son. But the process of even trying to create a human for
Mhm.
him was extremely taxing.
Yes.
And I did not know how much it was breaking him down emotionally until much later. So
Mhm.
have you and your partner, like, talked about it, and can you
Yeah.
kind of share your thoughts?
The interesting thing was, our miscarriage was fairly recent. And so, and I remember we were talking about it in the gym. Like, I'm so thankful that we have this amazing community of women, because in sharing my story and letting everybody in and letting everybody know, I was then, confronted with everybody else's stories. Some women had had 4 miscarriages back to back. And so I was really in this amazing support network. And the one thing I felt that actually was really lacking from the conversation was how Eric felt. How was Eric doing? Because whilst, yeah, it's our bodies and it's, and it's happening to us, it's also happening, I recognize it's also happening to him. Like, he also had to sit there and be in that, in the bathroom with me. He also had to feel that disappointment, that concern. And I remember when it happened to me, I was like, he was like, we got to get you to, a hospital and get you checked over. And my doctor at the time, I wasn't with a gynecologist. I was literally just about to go for an 8-week scan. So I was like a day away from my 8-week scan. And
Wow.
so, yeah, so we were literally waiting to hear back from the gynecologist as to whether we'd been accepted. So long story short, we had to, we were basically just kind of in limbo, and they were kept telling us you have to go to ER. I'm like, I'm not going to ER. The last thing I want to do today while I'm in pain and, bleeding a lot, is sit in a room with a bunch of strangers and feel like I'm bleeding out. I'm not doing that. And he was like, you need to take this doctor's appointment and go and get checked over. And I was like, I just want to wrap myself up like a burrito on the sofa. And he told me, and then I remember wrapping myself up and being just really stubborn. And I remember looking at them across the room. I was like, because I just thought, old Louise, who's in a relationship with herself, would have been totally fine just laying on the sofa the whole day. Eric had made up his mind. He was like, I was going to give you 15, 20 minutes, then I was going to throw you on my shoulder and take you to the appointment. And I realized, you know, before he managed to do that, that I'm not just in a relationship with myself. Like, you know, there is a whole other human being to consider and his feelings. And whilst it's happening to my body, he's there too, and it's happening to him too. And so, you know, from that perspective, I think there was an awareness very early on that this isn't just a toll on me, this is also a strain on him. And I can see the stress of the timing of everything, whereas before we were kind of just living in this kind of bubble of woo, let's just see what happens. And now that's really changed. That dynamic changes when you are trying for a baby. And I remember always saying to my friends, stop trying, just go on holiday, have fun. Do you know what I mean? Stop trying, have an awareness of when you're going to ovulate. But like, what if there's one thing that I've always found through just track and field sports, is the minute you start trying is the minute you start trying to muscle it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that if you're trying to high jump, you're trying to muscle it off the ground. Oh, you knock that bar off every single time. And so there's something to be said about really just like letting go in that process, you know. And it's a very hard thing to do, especially for people like you and I who are used to controlling and always controlling the outcomes. You know what I mean? And that mindset is a humongous asset, because it keeps you showing up, keeps you attacking those hurdles. But at the end of the day, that hurdle's going to do whatever the hell it wants to you at the end of the day.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
I kind of realized quite quickly on, I'm like, oh, this can either be a real mental slog for us both, or we can just surrender to the natural rhythm and routine and really just try our best to go with the flow as best we can.
Yeah. So true. And Louise, like, honestly, I commend you so much for like just like taking a moment to like step outside of yourself in this moment where you're so like immersed in like the depths of what is happening to your body in real time, and really seeing your partner and acknowledging their emotions, their feelings, and like, you know, their state of mind, and like also knowing that this person is in it with you and that you guys are a team throughout it. Like, when you lose together. When you win together, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for me, I kind of disregarded that in the very beginning. And, you know, Jimmy and I have spent, you know, a lot of time in therapy, like working through all of that. But I think I was being really selfish through the process of our fertility struggles. And, you know, it's interesting that you actually just pointed to the advice that you would give to your friends of like, just don't think about it, be aware of it, but don't think about it, because that's actually how we ended up getting pregnant. We started the process of IVF, and
Really?
actually a lot of people don't know that we actually did get pregnant naturally, because partway through, like, I don't know if I mentioned in the beginning, my body is hypersensitive to foreign substances. So like medication, like anything that I put in my body that is just not natural, my body immediately has some sort of reaction. And I don't know if it's just this heightened awareness that I have as an athlete and former dancer, like that immediately I can tell what my body is like reacting to, or like I can tell like how my body is feeling in reaction to whatever I just put in my body. So like taking all of those different shots and stuff, the stems, and preparing for the egg retrieval really just like completely depleted me mentally, spiritually, physically. Like, I had no choice but to pause, and I had no choice but to like actually take my friend's advice of just like, I needed to take a breather. And I was on the phone with my aunt, and she could hear my voice, but she had called me because she saw a video that I had posted on the internet. And she's like, you know, I know that you talked to me, but I really, really just, I needed to reach you. Like, I needed to make sure that I talked to you on the phone, and I told you, like, listen, you and Jimmy just need to reconnect with each other. She's like, you need to book a weekend somewhere away. Go just have time with each other. Just enjoy it. Don't think about anything. Don't force anything. Take a pause from the treatment. Doesn't mean you have to stop doing it, but you both need a reset. And I'm like, okay, I can hear you on that. I understand. I feel you. Okay, I'll do it. And I booked us this yurt upstate in the Adirondacks, and we were up in like these snowy mountains, and it was like so quiet up there. And we were doing puzzles and laughing and listening to music and ordering really bad takeout and like just really enjoying each other's company for a weekend. We took our dog up there and we were taking hikes in the snow and like, you know, just really like renewing our love and like renewing our just like trust in one another and our relationship. Yeah, it just like we grew so much closer in the matter of like 3 days, and we were just like really enjoying ourselves. And that's when I got pregnant.
I love it. Give me the coordinates of that yard.
I'm sending them to you right after this.
It's brilliant. And now you guys have baby Sage.
We do.
Oh my gosh. Like, okay. So now we're with child. I say we because it's a team.
Yes.
Like on the day you gave birth, talk me through that. Like, where were you at? Were you in this? Because I'm like, you know, you've been through so much at this point. Was there fear? Did you know you were going to be? Were you just like, nah, this is my baby? Like, where are you at mentally and emotionally?
I have to say, all the way up to the actual moments of me giving birth and being in labor, I had more self-doubt and doubt in the process than I've ever experienced in my entire life. Like I said in the beginning, like I consider myself to be a very optimistic person.
Yeah.
But from having the miscarriage and then the following, you know, year, I actually had an ectopic pregnancy before getting pregnant. It was like a few months before I got pregnant, I had an ectopic. And I just felt like I was like on the edge of my seat the entire time that I was pregnant. And I like didn't want to do the wrong thing. I didn't want to eat the wrong thing. I didn't want to be in the wrong space. Like I just felt like I was like tiptoeing through my entire pregnancy. And there were so many moments of joy and so much laughter and like so many things that I loved so much about being pregnant. But the fear, the underlying fear that this may not be solid and like I may not be able to like bring it to fruition just kind of sat there the whole time. It was like this looming cloud over this experience. And I really, really commend all women that are able to go through any sort of fertility treatment, any sort of pregnancy loss, ectopic pregnancy, whatever the case, because we have to be so ridiculously strong and resilient to even just keep living past then, you know, like regardless if you make it to your rainbow baby or you don't, like the will and the strength that it takes to continue to move forward is something that, man, I'm in awe of women for. Like I'm just in awe of us, and you know, in awe of our partners for being able to support us through it. I say all the time, like, I don't know, and my husband just walked past too. I'm like, I don't know how he stuck around me through all of that. Like Louise, I
picked a good one.
I did. I picked an amazing one. He is truly a phenomenal partner, but I was all out of sorts. Like with all those hormones flooding through my body when I was pregnant, and oh yeah. But yeah.
I was just going to say, as you're talking there about the doubt, it took me to a story of when, and not the same, but kind of similar. Took me to a story of when I was leading the competition for the Commonwealth Games. And obviously, my event in track and field was 7 events. And I was on the 6th event and I was the leader. This is the first time I'd ever been at a major championships and ever been in first place. And all of a sudden, I realized when I went underneath the stadium to prep for the 800 meters, which was my least favorite event, I realized how much I had to lose. And I have honestly never been so fearful in all of my life. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, out of my positive, uplifting, upbeat, ever optimistic personality, came all of these demons. And it was like that, literally voices saying, what if you trip? What if you fall? What if you get a stitch? There were so many demons that came up during the, I would say, 90 minutes between the javelin throw and the 800 meters that I'd never heard before. And as you were saying that doubt, I was like, this sounds really familiar. And I remember literally having to emotionally, mentally, physically just push those demons aside. And I remember like thinking, like, if you don't run to that start, because you can start a race any old, you can walk to the start line, you can jog to the start line, or you can sprint to the start line. If you don't sprint to that start line and let the track and every other competitor know that you came for that gold medal, then you could lose this. And I remember like my posture having to really change, because I was like, you said you wanted to become the Commonwealth gold medalist. That's what you said you wanted a year ago. Are you the person you said you were? Because now it's like it's all to play for. And I was like, when you were talking about doubt, I was like, Deja, is it a bit like that?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
you
And you know, what's interesting is like, yeah, for me, I say that in my mind, even now walking through this first year of motherhood, like this is what I asked for, you know, this is what I wanted so badly. And in a similar way of you like training for this major competition, you know, we're training for the greatest marathons of our lives when we're giving birth and we're going into labor. And I really honestly could not have been in that room and in that space without a coach. And I will say I had several coaches. I feel like I had a team of coaches, but so I had my pelvic floor therapist, Maya Nasani, incredible woman, coached me from 12 weeks pregnant to all the way through my pregnancy, all the way through labor and delivery. She wasn't actually in the room, but I was seeing her on a weekly basis, then a monthly basis. And then I've been seeing her all through my postpartum journey. So one of my coaches, my doula, my dear friend, Pauline Anise, like one of the most incredible humans I've ever met in my life. I could not have given birth to my son without having her in the room. Honestly, there were so many moments where I was like, I want to give up on my birth plan. Like, give me the drugs. Like, and she would just bring me back to my breath. She would ground me. She would make sure that I stayed hydrated throughout the whole entire process, make sure that I was moving into different positions, which by the way, my husband was also doing these positions with me and holding me in these positions. I mean, he was the real MVP in that room. I know the baby was coming out of my body, but you couldn't have told him any different. He was in labor too. And, you know, he also, I would say he was more of like my teammate. Like if we were running a relay race, like we're passing the baton to each other. He passed it to me. I passed it to him. Like he was in the race with me. So that was like really incredible. And then I have the most amazing OBGYN on the planet. Like when I tell you she honored my birth plan, she every step of the way reassured me that I was going to do great and that, you know, everything was just going to flow smoothly. And anytime I had a concern, I mean, I kept this woman several times trapped in a room with me for like an hour, just flooding down questions of like all the things like, and she would just stay with me. And like, I never felt like dismissed. I never felt rushed out of the room. Like, you know, she was was just so warm and like had the best bedside manner and was so comforting throughout the process. So I say her. And then on the day of, I got, all these extra little coaches, the nurses, and everything just like was in alignment for that day. Like the right people were in the room. My aunt was there, my mom was there, my husband, of course, and then my doula and doctor and a few of the nurses. And, it's such a primal state that you are in when you are giving birth. That, I went into it telling myself I was not going to be in pain. I was like, no, I might feel pressure, but it's not going to be pain. Quickly changed that once I got into it and felt what those contractions were like and stepped into active labor, and then got stuck at like 9 3/4 centimeters and like needing to get over that hump and not being able to push, but like feeling like I needed to push. Oh my goodness.
Okay, I'm pushing. I don't even care what you say.
Listen, right?
I'm pushing. That's a 10 for me.
That's a 10 for me.
Good enough.
Yeah. But man, 15 hours of labor, and I have the greatest gift I could have ever imagined. He is so smart. He is so sweet, so curious. He's my little explorer, my little climber, my little runner. Now he is like running around the house. So I'm pretty sure I've got a little athlete here because he's doing laps around my kitchen every day. But but yeah, he's amazing. He's really, really incredible. And everything that I faced, every challenge, every tear, every obstacle, every moment, and every connection led me straight to him. And I would not change a single thing.
Here's a question. Would you do it again?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely. I mean, like the whole entire journey again, or just like having another child,
whatever it takes.
I would do it again. I think knowing what I know now, because hindsight is always 20/20. I think I would maybe have a different approach to the journey, but yeah.
Do differently. One thing you'd do differently.
One thing. Oh, I feel like I'd do so many things differently. I think I wouldn't apply so much pressure to myself. I think as not just as women, but women of color, and on top of that, athletic women of color, very intelligent, athletic women of color.
Overachievers
with a capital O.
Overachievers.
Yes. But being all of that, I think that we apply so much pressure to ourselves to operate in excellence in everything that we do. And, what I've learned in motherhood is that like, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall short. The unexpected is going to come as you step into the unknown. And guess what? Things are still going to flow and you're going to be okay. And, I think I would, if I had to pick one specific thing, I would definitely relieve some of that pressure on myself.
I love that. Now, Deja, you've been super, super active on social media talking about the highs and lows, not just of the journey to motherhood, but also postpartum. And I want to dive into that for a little bit. How have you been navigating your postpartum journey, and what are the challenges that you've personally faced?
Oh, I feel like there's a new challenge at every turn. I think what I've been struggling most with is not recognizing myself in the mirror. I've always been, like I said, an athlete, but more than anything, I've always had a pretty positive image of my body. And I think seeing my body change in this way and like transform in this way, that I created life, and I know that I accomplished something so powerful and so just magnificent. And simultaneously, I start to feel like down on myself. Like, why wasn't my body able to snap back in the way that, some other women's are? Like, you jump down that rabbit hole of comparison, which like will only steal joy from you. And I feel like not being able to bounce back in that way has weighed heavily on me. You know, I'm now 13 months postpartum, or I'm stepping into 13 months postpartum next week. And I honestly still don't see an image that I am fully pleased with and that I am proud of. And then two things also exist at once, because I'm also so proud of my body for what it has been through and what it's been able to accomplish and the resilience that it's had and the fact that I'm healthy, you know?
Mm.
So I think, like, you know, I've faced quite a few challenges. I think a lot of them in the physical, but I also think a lot also emotionally and spiritually. I think postpartum depression and anxiety, I talked about that a lot at the beginning of my journey. That was that, I mean, it came in like a wrecking ball.
Go on.
And, you know, they do talk about how all of your hormones just plummet completely, like slap down as soon as the baby comes out.
Mhm.
And I think you kind of sit on this high for a little while. At least I did for the first few days.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I didn't really quite feel that sort of like gut punch
Yeah.
from the anxiety and the depression and the intrusive thoughts and all the things. But pretty much like a week or two in, I started to feel it, and the emotions rushed in so heavily. And I really, for a while, was just not okay. And I'm grateful that I had so much support all around me. But I will say that, you know, it was an experience that I wish that I was more prepared for, because, you know, I've heard of the terms, but I did not know what to expect in the
Mm.
experience of actually having it myself.
What type of emotions were you having? What were the thoughts that were going through your mind at that time?
So I think like one of the biggest things that I said to my therapist was like, these intrusive thoughts are so like brutal and like really, really scary to me that I don't want to voice them out loud, because I know the power of my tongue. I believe in manifestation. I
Mm.
do believe that there's power in the words that you speak out loud. And these thoughts were so heavy that I was like, I won't say them out loud. I
Mm.
won't even write them down on paper, because I just didn't want it to be something that could potentially even happen, you know? And even to this day, like the thoughts that I was having were scaring me, you know? And I never got to the point where I thought I would ever harm my child intentionally. But
Mhm.
I did get to scary moments where I thought, oh my gosh, like I could have an accident and something could happen to my baby, or something could happen to me. And like, that was terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably did you feel like it was rendering you kind of immobile? Like were you feeling really anxiety stricken?
Yeah, I do feel like at moments it was debilitating, but
Mhm.
I also feel like there was just like this motor that was going on inside of me that like kept me going, because I felt this deep responsibility to take care of my baby. And
Mhm.
so whether I was running on autopilot or something else, like I always felt like I had enough strength to like feed my child. And like sometimes I didn't feel like I could feed myself or take a shower or like
Mm.
do anything to, you know, take care of myself.
Mhm.
But I always felt like I could make myself get up and take care of my baby.
Wowzers. What does that look like for you now? Self care.
Ah, well, Louise, I'm getting back on my self-care tip. I mean, now it looks like massages, a day in the city with my friends. Yesterday, I went out with one of my girlfriends. We went to see
Right.
Wicked.
Yeah.
Huh?
Before you and your girls went out last
Oh
night.
yes. Oh yes. And it was so much fun. Went to the Carlisle, got to see one of my girlfriends sing. She was making her debut there, and that was amazing. But yeah, like self-care looks like doing things for me that are just for me, you know? I'm a mother 24/7, or should I say 25/8. Like you
Mhm.
clock in, you never clock out.
Yeah.
But I also realize that like I am at my best and I am the best mother that I can be when I am taking care of myself. And so now, even if taking care of myself, like today, I didn't do too much because I was recovering from last night, but I did shower today and I did do a workout today and I did brush my teeth today. So that was my self-care, you know?
Check, check. Would you
Yeah.
say your workouts look different now than they did, like, way, way before you were even thinking about having a child?
Yes, completely different. I will say that I have always been one to like attack a workout with everything that I've got, like whatever my 100% today is, I'm giving that to my workout. But I will say that sometimes like my workouts get interrupted by my son waking up from his nap, or like I have to do a workout in my living room and I can't go to the gym, or my workout is going to be 10 minutes today because
Yeah.
that's all I've got.
Mhm.
Yeah, it just looks different because, prior to having a child, I was able to call the shots because I was focused on me, obviously also focused on my partner, but he's an adult and, he makes his own decisions. I'm making decisions for this little life. So, you know, taking him into consideration always, I have to kind of shift things around, but
Keep the shot
I'm going to
going.
get a workout in.
I love it. Deja, we're gonna end with a few little questions, just some quick fire questions. It's actually
Okay.
a game. Now, normally we call this game this or that, but for you, I'm changing it up. The It's called "What Does Your Body Want Postpartum?" So it's still going to be this or that. I'm going to give you two options. The one that really feels the most relevant to you right now. Okay, ready? Hit training or weight training?
Hit training.
Why is that? Why do you feel like, okay, hit training is over weight training right now?
Well, I've always chosen hit over weight training. And that is because I love to sweat. Like, I love that cathartic feeling of just like sweat dripping down your face. You feel like this high on the inside that, like, it just can keep you like fluttering through the whole day and sometimes carries over into the next day. Like, I just get so charged up with a hit workout.
Love it. Calorie restriction or calorie moderation?
Neither.
Where do you feel like you're at?
I eat what I want. Like, I allow my
Yeah.
body. And also, by the way, like, I have to tell you, Louise, that my meals these days sometimes just look like my son's scraps. So like today I chopped up some strawberries and I made him some applesauce and avocado. And honestly, like, I hadn't made myself lunch yet. So I'm just like nibbling on like whatever he like doesn't want or like doesn't eat. So
Yeah.
like throughout the day, like, I mean, today I was just like snacking on some M&Ms. Like, I'm allowing my body to like have what it wants in moderation. And, you know, I really have never subscribed to diet culture. That's just not my thing. And to each their own. I definitely do respect like people pushing like nutrition. But like, to me, I want to do what makes me happy. I get one life to live.
Mhm.
And, if I want to enjoy different cuisines wherever I go and like, dabble in having snacks here and there, like, I'm going to do it. I am very conscious of like what I am putting into my body, and I know the results that will come from what I am putting into my body. So like, if I want to have some fun, I'm gonna have some fun.
Okay, good. Because the next question is health food or junk food?
Junk food.
Running or walking, Deja?
Walking.
Um, Training at home or training in the gym?
Today, training at home.
Good for you. Fruits or vegetables?
Ooh, that's hard. Oh, I would choose both, but I guess today I'll say fruits.
You're having them strawberries.
Yeah.
Protein bar or a protein shake?
Ooh. Nowadays, I don't really do either. I like usually get my protein from like eggs or meat, or like if I could have one, I'd have to say protein shake.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like
Yeah.
protein bars always taste like cardboard.
They do, right?
Yeah. baby question here. Breastfeed or bottle feed? Which do you prefer?
All right. So I just ended my breastfeeding journey, and I'm going to say, for my sanity, bottle feeding.
Got you. I can understand that. Okay. Hibernation or well, I'm going to say hibernate or hypersocial.
Hibernate.
And also, it's that winter. We're in that winter period. It's
Mm-hmm.
cooking in or taking out.
Cooking in, but not me, my husband.
Yeah, but Jimmy, love
Yeah.
it. Deja, that wraps the majority of the questions that we have today. I do want to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
For all those women out there who are perhaps at the beginning of their pregnancy journeys, or in that period where they're perhaps struggling, what advice do you have for those women?
I think like it's as simple as find community. I think one core source that carried me throughout every piece of my journey thus far has been community. Even when I was having my fertility struggles, I found a fertility support group called Raleigh. And actually, I'm still really close friends with my amazing support group leader. Her name's Sonia. Shout out to her. She's one of the most incredible humans I've ever met in my life. But yeah, community has carried me through. Having conversations like this, texting with other moms in the middle of the night, having other moms lean on me and ask me questions as they're entering into their journey, meeting people online, meeting people out, and having these connections through just like fertility and motherhood and postpartum and all these things. Like, I think, more than anything, like as women, finding community really and truly can bring so much healing and so much comfort to you, no matter where you are in your journey.
And one final question, Deja, what did you come to slay?
Ooh. I came to slay. This is good. I didn't even think about this, but I know that you asked this question. I came to slay the moment.
Oh, I love that. And slay it you did, my lovely. Thank you so much for joining us on the Slay podcast and sharing your journey. Like I said, I think it has the ability to really touch a great deal of women who, when they need it the most, more importantly. So I thank you so much for being so honest, so candid, and so open. Deja,
I love you.
I know. When are you back in LA?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so my husband and I were actually talking about this because since we met in LA, we have to bring our son there. So I think we're gonna wait until Jimmy has summer break, but we'll definitely be in California at some point next year.
Well, we're welcoming you with open arms. You've got a place here with me and Eric. Come by.
I will. I most definitely will.
Love you, Deja. Have a great
Love you.
That concludes this episode of Slay. Stay tuned for more empowering discussions on female health, fitness, and life. You can follow me at Louise Hazel on social media, and you can follow Deja at Deja Riley. Check out the Slay brand now at Slay Athletic Club. And don't forget to subscribe to the Slay podcast if you haven't done so already on YouTube. Don't forget to leave us a comment. And you can also get fit at home using the Slay app. You can download that now for free from the App Store to join